I have every right to inspect your property, like it or not." That's what this wild woman was yelling at us from behind our locked gate. She claimed to be the president of our HOA. The catch? We live way up in the mountains, far from any HOA jurisdiction, not even a sniff of one for miles. But she wasn't backing down. Armed with some official-looking documents, a clipboard, and the confidence of someone who truly believed she ran the neighborhood, she marched up like she owned the place. What she didn't realize was that my wife had been waiting for this moment. What followed, you'll have to hear to believe, and by the end, you'll see why being prepared is always better than being intimidated. This one's for the Echo Stories fama. Have you ever encountered someone like this? Share your most unbelievable HOA or fake authority run-in in the comments. I was just 16 when my dad lost this cabin to a shady property investor. Ever since, I swore no one would ever threaten our home again. That memory came rushing back as I watched this woman storm up our drive like she owned the deed. But let me rewind a bit. The context is key. It all started about 3 months earlier. A woman named Diane suddenly appeared, introducing herself as a representative of the Jefferson County HOA Enforcement Division. Now, I know what you're thinking, who actually buys that? But here's the thing. When you live in a rural mountain area, you're used to being left alone. When someone shows up with documents that look official, your instinct isn't to challenge the aim, it's to wonder what mistake you might have made. And that's exactly the reaction Diane was counting on. Soon enough, she began issuing fake violation notices, wrong paint color, unkempt landscaping, and more. Then came the threats of $500 fines each month unless the violations were corrected. And it wasn't just us. Mrs. Patterson, a 74-year-old widow down the road, got hit too. So did the Johnsons, the Rodriguezes, and half a dozen other families. That's where Diane made her fatal error. She tried to scam my wife, Karen. Now, Karen isn't just smart as she's calculated. Before we moved out here, she worked as a paralegal. Years ago, her mom lost $8,000 to a phony charity, and Karen's never forgotten it. She has a rule: when someone demands money under the guise of authority, always confirm that authority. So, while the rest of us were scratching our heads, wondering if we'd broken some obscure HOA rule, Karen got to work the way she does best, with research. "I don't trust her," Karen said one evening, holding one of Diane's bogus notices. "I'm looking into this woman." 3 weeks later, Karen had built an entire dossier. Diane Walsh, from Denver, lost her own house in 2022, illegitimate HOA foreclosure, and now, she was out here in rural areas running a revenge scam. The kicker? She had absolutely zero legal standing. The HOA she claimed to work for dissolved back in 2018. That's when Karen kicked into high gear. She contacted Sheriff Martinez and laid everything out, got a real warrant issued, set up hidden cameras around the property. "I'm just going to let her hang herself," Karen told me, with that mischievous smile that always meant someone was in trouble. Her plan was simple but genius: let Diane dig her own grave, and then catch her red-handed. That Saturday was chilly and overcast. I was making coffee when I heard the rumble of a car engine. Looking out the window, I spotted a B2 Honda Civic, sporting a homemade HOA enforcement magnet on the side, and out stepped Diane, looking like a cliché copyright from a bad TV drama. Thrift store blazer, death grip on her clipboard, and the kind of face that practically shouted, "I'm here to speak to the man of the house. Open this gate right now," she bellowed, stomping toward the entrance. "This is a mandatory compliance inspection." Karen, still sipping her coffee by the window, glanced at me, then pressed a button on her phone. Click. The gate locked with a loud snap that echoed through the still morning air. "Good morning, Diane," Karen said through the intercom, her voice sugary sweet with a razor-sharp undertone. Or should I say, Mrs. Walshaw from Denver. Diane flinched like she'd been zapped. Her face went ghostly pale. "Whoa, how do you know that name?" she stammered, spinning around like she expected agents to burst from the woods. Karen stepped out onto the porch, holding a manila envelope in her hand. "If you're going to forge HOA documents, Diane, maybe don't use Comic Sans." The psychological game had begun and Karen was just getting started. "When you printed those violations on your home inkjet, did you really think no one would notice the papers from Walmart? Those are official documents," Diane insisted, though her voice had lost all its command. She sounded more like a kid caught sneaking out than a figure of authority. Karen chuckled and not maliciously, just amused. Jefferson County uses watermarked paper and digital signatures, I called them. Want to know what else I found out? You could practically see the desperation creeping in. Diane reached into her blazer and pulled out something that looked like an ID badge. I have full enforcement powers. You're interfering with an official investigation, she cried, waving it around like a shield. Karen squinted from the porch, then burst out laughing. That's a laminated printout. I can't see the peeling edges from here. At that point, I couldn't help myself. I stepped outside and joined Karen. Diane, I said, my father lost this cabin once to people like you. That won't happen again. Something about bringing up my dad made my voice sharper than I expected. Diane looked between us, panic rising as the realization heated. This wasn't playing out the way she'd planned. I'm coming in whether you like it or not, she shouted. Diane's voice cracked with desperation. I have rights, she insisted. That's when Karen dropped her trump card. You absolutely do, she said smoothly, pulling a sheet from the manila envelope. You have the right to remain silent. Diane blinked, her brain clearly trying to catch up. What, a broken bar? Karen held the paper higher. Because anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. This is a certified copy of your arrest warrant, issued just yesterday. For a moment, everything went still, not a sound except for birds chirping in the trees. Diane stumbled backward like she'd just been hit. No, a broken bar? That's not possible. You can't issue a warrant. Her voice had gone from commanding to shrill in seconds. You're right, Karen said, smiling in that calm, slightly terrifying way she does. I can't, but Sheriff Martinez can. And as if on cue, because of course Karen had timed this down to the second, we heard the unmistakable crunch of tires on gravel. Karen gave me a look of total satisfaction. Perfect timing. Sheriff Martinez emerged from his patrol car, wearing that calm, collected expression of someone who's seen every excuse in the book and knows none of them will work. Mrs. Walsh, we need to have a conversation, he said, locking eyes with Diane. Karen had been setting this up for weeks, and now, it was all about to pay off. What would you do if someone tried to push their way onto your land with fake credentials? Tell us your story in the comments. The next few moments played out like a slow-motion collapse of a con artist's fantasy. Sheriff Martinez moved toward the gate with a steady, confident stride. He'd clearly done this before Rhea, and he already knew how it would end. Diane Walsh, he said, you're under arrest for fraud, impersonating a public official, and theft by deception. Diane completely unraveled. This is a mistake. I work with the HOA. Ask anyone, she cried, gesturing wildly toward our neighbors' homes like they'd come running to vouch for her. None did. Martinez didn't flinch. Ma'am, there's no HOA in this area. It was dissolved back in 2018. His words landed like a blow. Diane staggered, speechless. Karen stepped forward and handed over a thick stack of documents. Every detail is in here. 6 months of her threats, bogus fines, and fake violation letters. I watched as Martinez flipped through the folder. His eyebrows rose higher with every page. You've been collecting payments on behalf of an organization that doesn't exist, he said. That's fraud, plain and simple. His tone made it clear. He'd seen scams like this before, and he wasn't buying the act. But Diane wasn't ready to surrender just yet. She shifted gears instantly, anger turning into fake tears. I'm just trying to help this community. They're bullying me. If we hadn't known what she'd done to our neighbors, the performance might have almost been convincing. Bullying? I echoed, unable to hold back. You threatened to take away Mrs. Patterson's house, Martinez cut in, sealing Diane's fate. Mrs. Patterson already filed a report. She gave you $1,200 last month, Akasha, for made-up violations. He reached into his cruiser and pulled out an evidence bag. Inside was a piece of notebook paper handwritten and marked as a receipt. HOA fines A paid to D. Walsh. Even from the porch, I could recognize Diane's handwriting. That was a legitimate payment. Diane protested weakly. I offer real services. I keep this place in order. Karen rolled her eyes. What services? Wandering around with a clipboard and a fake badge? Then Martinez dropped the real bomb. 8 households, Diane. That's how many people you scammed around here? I felt my chest tighten. 8? He nodded grimly and began listing them off. Mrs. Patterson, $1,200. The Johnsons, $800. The Rodriguez family, $650. The Petersons, $900. 4 more homes, adding up to $2,100. In total $5,650 stolen from families in this quiet mountain community. That's when Diane finally lost it. The money was owed. She screamed. They were in violation. I know how HOAs work. I lost everything to one. Her mask dropped completely. The composed fake enforcer was gone, replaced by a bitter, unhinged woman shouting in a blind rage. Karen just watched her, detached but sharp, like a scientist observing a meltdown. So, instead of learning from your experience, you decided to become the very thing that ruined your life? She said. Martinez had heard enough. He pulled out his cuffs and began reading Diane her rights with all the emotion of a DMV worker calling number 52. But even as the metal clicked around her wrists, Diane wasn't done. Wesley will fix this, she shrieked. He knows people, real people. They'll clear this up. That was the first time we'd heard that name. Wesley. Karen's head snapped up instantly, her instincts on high alert. Wesley? She asked. Her husband? Martinez nodded. We're looking for him, too. He pulled out one of the phony violation letters. These weren't just printed off a home computer. Someone with design skills helped her make them look official. Karen took the letter and inspected the header. Her expression changed. The same look she had the night she first suspected Diane was a fraud. These are professional grade, not homemade, she muttered. Then she looked up with that quiet intensity she gets when she's onto something. Sheriff, she said, I think I know where Wesley is. Where? He asked. Karen's reply was cool and confident. Most likely, at their house, destroying evidence. Martinez gave her a long look. Can you prove that? Karen gave that smile again, of the one that meant the trap was still unfolding. I've been monitoring their movements for 3 weeks. I know exactly when they're off guard. And that's when it hit me. Karen hadn't just been setting up Diane. She'd been planning to take down their entire operation. As Sheriff Martinez guided Diane into the back of his cruiser, she let out one final threat, dripping with desperation. You have no idea what you're up against. Wesley has backups. This isn't over. Karen didn't miss a beat. Actually, Diane, she said sweetly, it is. You just don't know it yet. I wrapped an arm around Karen as we stood on the porch, watching the patrol car disappear down the winding road. Thank you, I said softly. Dad would be proud. And I meant it. My father never got justice when a scammer took our family's home, but today, we delivered justice for him, and for 8 other families who couldn't fight back. Karen nodded, her voice low and steady. This was for every family that didn't have someone to stand up for them. But even as we were taking in a moment, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and her expression shifted from satisfied to sharply focused. Motion sensor just triggered at Diane's place. Wesley? I asked. Right on cue, she said. It's time for phase 2. Watching Diane get hauled away had been deeply satisfying, but Karen's mind was already ahead of the next move. She'd structured this like a grandmaster's chess match, and she was still several steps ahead of everyone. I looked at the woman beside me who had taken down a neighborhood predator with nothing but a laptop and sheer determination, and realized I was married to someone incredible. Karen tapped her phone and pulled up a live feed from one of the surveillance cameras. A man in a baseball cap was scrambling around behind Diane's shed. There he is, she muttered, narrowing her eyes. He's panicky, but he's moving with intent. He's done this before. What's he trying to destroy? I asked. Documents. Most likely, Karen replied. But we'll see. Watching Wesley blunder around on our hidden camera feed was like witnessing a real-time masterclass in amateur criminal mistakes. Karen had placed the cameras around Diane's house weeks earlier with the sheriff's full permission. Of course, I've had eyes on this place for the last 2 weeks, she explained as she pulled up multiple views on her laptop. Wesley always comes back around 2 on weekends. He's predictable. Sure enough, there he was, rifling through storage bins, stuffing garbage bags full of what looked like paperwork, shredding documents, tossing files. It was chaos. So what's the plan now? I asked. Karen smiled like a wolf spotting prey. Now we make him nervous and push him into making a mistake. Phase 1 of her takedown plan had been psychological. She started quietly spreading the news through our mountain town's tight-knit gossip chain, an unstoppable network of busybodies with nothing better to do. Just a few casual calls. "Did you hear? Diane got arrested. Sheriff might be raiding her place next." Within an hour, nearly every neighbor in a 10-mile radius knew. Within 2, Wesley knew. Then came phase 2. Misdirection. Karen posted on social media about a supposed family emergency in Denver, saying we'd be out of town all weekend. It was too carefully laid for Wesley to take the risk he was no doubt itching to make. Phase 3 was the masterpiece, the honey trap. With Sheriff Martinez's approval, Karen had planted a decoy client list at Diane's house. It contained names, addresses, and fake notes about emergency cash stashes, all tied to a hidden GPS tracker. She'd also installed cameras in the garage and office, and motion sensors on every door and window. "Watch this," she said, pointing at her screen. At exactly 3:30 p.m., Wesley's rusted-out pickup came barreling up the mountain road, looking like he'd just escaped a burning building. He skidded into the driveway, jumped out of the truck, and froze. Neighbors were milling around, whispering, clearly aware of what had gone down with Diane, and you could see the moment it clicked for him. Diane was gone, and he was next. What came next felt like watching a cornered animal. Wesley burst into the house, hauling in his trash bags. He started ripping through everything, shredding computer files, tearing up letterheads, and shoving documents into the fireplace like it was a crime scene bonfire. He even chucked the printer cartridges like they were radioactive. "He's wiping the place clean," I muttered. Karen was studying him intently. "Not everything. Watch him." A broken bar. She leaned closer, tracking Wesley's every move like a predator stalking prey. "What's he looking for?" I asked. "The backup drive," she said. "He's after something specific." And sure enough, we saw him tear the place apart. He was tossing drawers, checking under furniture, rifling through boxes, all in search of something small and crucial. That's when he found up to Karen's planted client list. Even through the grainy feed, we could see his eyes light up as he read it. She had labeled it as a record of cabin owners with over $50,000 each in emergency funds. He stared at the fake list like it was a treasure map. "Unbelievable," we heard him mutter through the audio. "She was holding out on me." He was at a crossroads. He could walk away and cut his losses, a broken bar, or chase after what he thought was one last big score. And like most people driven by greed, he chose the latter. At exactly 8 p.m., we watched him drive toward our side of the mountain. He parked about a quarter mile from our cabin and approached on foot, tools in hand. Professional tools, lockpicks, a crowbar, and nothing casual about it. Karen watched his GPS tracker on her phone. Right on time, we were tucked away in our basement's secure safe room, monitoring everything through a web of hidden cameras. The house lights were on timers to make it seem like we were home, just going about our evening. Sheriff Martinez was staged nearby, waiting for our signal. Wesley crept toward our back door with the quiet efficiency of someone who'd done this more than once. He worked the lock like he'd practiced. Karen leaned toward the screen. "Look at that technique. This isn't his first time." In less than 3 minutes, he was inside. He immediately started searching for the imaginary stash of the $50,000 in emergency cash from Karen's decoy document. He went from room to room, pulling open drawers, ransacking closets, crawling through the pantry. The brilliance of Karen's trap wasn't just in the bta, it was in how it preyed on Wesley's psychology. He wasn't just searching, he was convinced, and that belief made him careless. As Wesley tore through our cabin, yanking open drawers and tossing household items like a burglar on a timer, Karen made her move. She triggered every light in the house at once. Wesley froze instantly, illuminated like a thief caught on stage mid-act. He spun around in shock, completely exposed. "Lose something, Wesley?" Karen's voice rang out from the intercom. The effect was chilling. Her voice echoed through the cabin like a ghost, calm and in control. He thought he was alone. He wasn't. "Who's there?" Wesley shouted, waving his crowbar in the air like it would protect him. "I'm armed." Karen didn't miss a beat. "No, you're not. You're just a scared little man holding a piece of scrap metal." He made a break for the front door, but it was no use. Our electronic lock system held firm. He was trapped. Karen had anticipated every possibility. Wesley Morrison, she continued, her voice sharp and steady, unemployed handyman, married to Diane Walsh for 8 years, currently wanted for breaking and entering. She rattled off his personal history like she was reading from a script. Wesley tried to protest, but his voice betrayed him, cracking like a kid caught lying. "You don't know anything." "Oh, but I do," Karen said. "I know you helped forge fake HOA letters. I know you targeted elderly residents. And I know you're about to be in handcuffs." Then came the final blow. "That fake client list you swiped from Diane's house, it had a GPS tracker in it. We've been monitoring your every move." Wesley instinctively reached into his pocket, pulling out the tiny tracker. He stared at it like it had personally betrayed him, and in a way, it had. That was the moment reality hit him. He'd been manipulated from the start. Right on cue, Sheriff Martinez and his backup team arrived, surrounding the cabin like clockwork. "Wesley Morrison, you are under arrest for burglary, conspiracy to commit fraud, and destruction of evidence," Martinez announced. Wesley gave one last half-baked attempt to spin the narrative. "This is entrapment. You set me up." Karen emerged from our safe room, practically glowing with quiet triumph. "You set yourself up the moment you decided to rip off your neighbors." The pressure finally cracked him. Wesley confessed everything. Diane had targeted 12 families across the area. Over the span of 6 months, they'd stolen close to $9,000. Wesley had been the one making the fake documents. He even bragged about his home printing setup. Their plan had been to drain our mountain community and then hit up other rural towns the same way. As Martinez secured him in cuffs, I stepped forward. "My father lost this cabin to scammers like you once," I told him. "Not this time. This time, we win." Wesley looked down, shame starting to flicker through his expression. "I just wanted to help my wife," he muttered. "By robbing elderly people?" I shot back. "That's not helping, that's predatory." Karen stepped up beside me, delivering one last truth bomb. "You know what separates you from us, Wesley. We were ready. You just reacted." As the second patrol car of the day pulled away with Wesley in the back seat, Karen's laptop pinged with an email. She opened data and her confident expression disappeared, replaced by stunned concern. "What is it?" I asked. "Wesley wasn't the only insider," she said, eyes glued to the screen. "There's more." The email revealed employment records from Jefferson County. Robert Wesley, Diane's brother, not husband as we'd thought, had been terminated. So had Linda Hayes from the county's property assessment office. Both had been caught falsifying official documents. I stared over Karen's shoulder, struggling to grasp it all. "Two people on the inside?" I asked. Karen nodded grimly. "They were feeding Diane real county formatting and making her fakes look legit." The next day, Sheriff Martinez called us with news that made my stomach twist. "Diane wants to talk," he said. "Claims she has information on a much larger scheme." I could tell from his tone he didn't fully buy it, but he couldn't ignore it either. "What kind of information?" Karen asked, as I put the call on speaker. "She says she knows of other fake HOA crews operating in rural areas across Colorado," Martinez explained, "but she wants a deal, less prison time in exchange." Karen didn't hesitate. "Sheriff, do you have recordings of her jail calls?" Martinez paused. "They're public record." "Why?" "Because I don't think she's giving anything up," Karen said coldly. "I think she's running another con from behind bars." And she was right. The jailhouse recordings played out like a tutorial in manipulation. In the first call, Diane told an unknown contact, "The mountain job went bad. They were waiting for us. Start the lawyer plan." The voice on the other end was calm. "How much trouble are we in?" Diane's reply sent a chill down my spine. "Full arrest. We need to activate the incompetency strategy immediately." The second call was to her attorney. It was all business. "I need a mental health defense," Diane said. "Make them believe I thought I had real authority." The lawyer didn't even flinch. "That'll cost extra. I've got cash hidden in 3 places," she said. "Just make it happen." But the most damning conversation came next, recorded just hours before Wesley's arrest. "Stick to the story," she told him. "I'm mentally unstable. You're just the poor husband trying to help your delusional wife. Play for sympathy." Her voice was cold, calculating, in total control. She wasn't having a breakdown. She was adapting. "She's not cutting a deal," Karen said flatly as we finished listening. "She's staging an insanity defense." The arrogance of it was infuriating. After months of threatening and extorting our neighbors under fake authority, Diane now wanted to pretend she actually believed she had it. "Can she even do that?" I asked, feeling helpless again in the face of this new twist. Karen's smile was razor-sharp, a cool, composed, deadly. "Not if I have anything to say about it," she said. Diane's competency hearing was set for the following week. Judge Wilson would decide whether she was mentally fit to stand trial. And in the days leading up to it, Karen threw herself into preparation with the same laser focus she had used to unravel Diane's entire scheme. "She's going to give the performance of her life," Karen warned as we prepped for court. "But I've got recordings that prove she's faking every second of it." The day of the hearing arrived, gray-skied and bone-cold if fitting for the weight of what we were about to witness. Diane made her entrance in a wheelchair, playing the part of the helpless, disoriented victim. She shook like a leaf, her eyes blank, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't understand why I'm here," she told Judge Wilson, sounding like someone who'd wandered in from a hospital ward. "I just wanted to help my neighbors follow the rules, like I was taught to." Her attorney, David Foster, delivered the supporting lines with solemn gravity. "Your Honor, my client suffers from a severe psychological disorder," he said. "The foreclosure of her home in 2020 caused trauma so deep, it's left her unable to distinguish between real authority and her imagined duties." Then came Dr. Patricia Lee, the court-appointed psychiatrist, delivering her testimony with clinical detachment. Mrs. Walsh does exhibit signs of sincerely believing she held legal authority to enforce HOA rules. "It is likely a trauma-based delusion." I watched Judge Wilson's face closely. My heart sank. He nodded thoughtfully, clearly moved by the talk of trauma and confusion. The woman who had run a months-long con, extorted elderly families, and evaded accountability was now about to escape consequences because she was good at pretending to be broken. Then Karen made her move. She approached the prosecutor during a recess, speaking in low, urgent tones. I couldn't hear what she said from the gallery, but I saw the man's skeptical expression shift as she handed him a thick folder. "Play the recording from yesterday morning," she told him, her voice calm but firm. He hesitated but then nodded. When court resumed, the prosecutor stood with a confidence we hadn't seen earlier. "Your Honor, I'd like to submit new evidence via material that directly contradicts the defense's claim of mental incompetence." The audio that followed was devastating. Diane's voice, clear and cold, echoed through the courtroom like a war drum. "Once I get past this competency thing and walk out of here, we'll restart in Pueblo County. I've already researched the target neighborhoods." It was a confina and a strategy in one chilling sentence. The courtroom froze. No one moved. You could have heard the breeze outside shift direction. Then Diane snapped. She bolted upright in her wheelchair as if electrocuted, her voice suddenly sharp and furious. "That's illegal wiretapping. You can't use that." Gone was the trembling victim. In her place stood the real Diane, intelligent, angry, manipulative, and fully aware of every legal angle. Foster jumped in, desperate. "Your Honor, my client is clearly confused. She doesn't understand." "I understand perfectly," Diane barked, cutting him off. "I know my rights." "That's inadmissible hearsay." Judge Wilson leaned forward slowly. The warmth from earlier was gone, replaced by something steely. "Mrs. Walsh," he said evenly, "you claimed not to understand why you were here just minutes ago." Panic flashed across Diane's face. "Yeah, I meant I didn't understand the legal, technical terms." But it was over. The mask had fallen. The act was dead. Karen rose from her seat. Diane locked eyes with her and shattered. "You," she spat. "This is your fault." "I had it all planned." Foster tried again. "Your Honor, please, she's under emotional distress." Diane ignored him, unraveling in front of the entire room. "I spent months setting up this operation. Some suburban housewife doesn't get to ruin it." Every word she uttered hammered another nail into her own defense. Judge Wilson didn't even flinch. "Mrs. Walsh has demonstrated clear understanding of both our actions and the nature of these proceedings," he ruled. "A competency evaluation is not only unnecessary, it would be insulting to this court's time." He struck the gavel with a finality that echoed like thunder off the mountain walls. Echo Stories wants to know, can someone really fake their way out of prison? Do mental health claims deserve leniency, even when weaponized? Drop your thoughts in the comments. 2 weeks later, we were back in court for sentencing. The room was packed with familiar faces and neighbors we'd stood beside during months of chaos. Mrs. Patterson sat in the front row flanked by her grown children, the Johnsons, the Rodriguezes, the Petersons, all there. On the other side of the courtroom, Sheriff Martinez and his deputies looked on in quiet solidarity. Karen and I sat together, hands clasped, feeling the weight of closure just within reach. This time, there was no theater, no costumes, no act. Diane sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit, no longer feigning weakness. The wheelchair was gone. So was the performance. She looked like what she was, a middle-aged woman who had made terrible, selfish choices and was finally about to pay for them. Judge Wilson cleared his throat and opened the folder on his desk. Judge Wilson brought the courtroom to attention and, before revealing the sentences, offered Diane one final opportunity to speak. She rose slowly, and for a brief second, I thought she might finally express regret. "Your Honor," she began, her voice measured, "I lost my home unjustly in Denver. I only wanted to help others uphold the rules of our community." Even in her last moment before sentencing, she couldn't bring herself to face the truth of her actions. Judge Wilson's reply was calm but unyielding. "Mrs. Walsh, losing your home does not entitle you to take from others." Then came the verdicts, each one a blow of justice. Diane Walsh, 3 years in state prison, ordered to repay $8,900 to her victims. A collective sigh of relief rippled through the room. Wesley Morrison, sentenced to 18 months, his cooperation slightly softening his consequences. Justice may not always be quick, but in this instance, it was deeply satisfying. I watched the victims' reactions, each one a quiet triumph. Mrs. Patterson wiped tears from her weathered cheeks. "Finally," she whispered, "now I can sleep peacefully." The Johnsons' teenage daughter leaned over to her parents, her voice barely above a murmur. "Our kids were scared we'd lose our house. Now they'll know bad people get punished." This wasn't just about legal resolution, it was about emotional restoration for families who had felt unsafe in their own homes. As guards came to escort Diane away in cuffs, she turned toward Karen with bitter fury. "This is all your fault. I was trying to help people." Karen met her glare with a composed certainty. "You weren't helping. You were robbing vulnerable neighbors." "That's not the same thing." Wesley, on the other hand, approached the victims during a brief pause. "I know sorry isn't enough," he said quietly. "But I truly am." Mrs. Patterson looked him over with a stern gaze before replying, "Sorry won't pay for my groceries, but at least you're owning up to it." Outside the courthouse, neighbors surrounded Karen and me like we were local heroes. Sheriff Martinez, a man hardened by years of service, looked around in awe. "In all my time doing this," he said, shaking his head, "I've never seen a community pull together like this." His pride made me straighten up a bit. On the way home, my thoughts turned to my dad. "He'd be amazed," I said to Karen as we drove through the winding mountain roads. "We didn't just protect our home, we saved the whole neighborhood." Karen smiled and squeezed my hand. "Your dad taught you to put family first." We just widened the definition. That night, Karen hosted the first of many neighborhood meetings focused on recovery and prevention. "We need to support each other," she told the dozen families gathered in our living room. "Mrs. Patterson, would you be willing to lead a support group?" The change in Mrs. Patterson was immediate. Her posture straightened, and her voice rang with new strength. "I'd be honored. No one should feel isolated after being taken advantage of." Sheriff Martinez showed up with some hopeful news. They had recovered $6,200 from Diane and Wesley's property. It wasn't everything, but it helped. Disbursements were made in proportion to what each family had lost. Mrs. Patterson got back $800 of her stolen $1,200. The Johnsons recovered $600 of their $800. It wasn't full restitution, but it was a start toward rebuilding trust. Karen proposed a lasting solution, a community protection plan. From now on, anyone claiming to represent an official entity would be verified by Sheriff Martinez's office. Mrs. Patterson volunteered on the spot to act as neighborhood verifier. "I've got the time, and I know everyone," she said. "I'll take the calls." The symbolism was powerful. One of the original victims now standing as a sentinel for the community. And just 2 days later, the new system was tested. A man approached Mrs. Patterson, claiming to be a county inspector. But instead of panicking, she calmly called the sheriff. "Can you verify this man?" "No inspectors scheduled," came the reply. When Mrs. Patterson mentioned the sheriff's name, the man fled without another word. The message was clear. Our mountain wasn't easy pickings anymore. 3 months after Diane's sentencing, Karen received a letter handwritten and postmarked from prison. The tone was shockingly different. Gone was the domineering language of her past. Instead, it felt sincere. "Karen, prison gives you a lot of time to think. I was angry about losing my home, but that didn't justify hurting people. You did the right thing. I hope one day the families I harmed can forgive me." Diane. Karen handed me the letter that evening. "What do you think?" she asked. I read it twice before answering. "I think she's finally being honest." Karen nodded slowly. "Forgiveness is something we do for our own peace, but at least she understands the harm she caused." It wasn't full closure, but it was something. A recognition, an admission. Sometimes that's all you can hope for. 6 months after the sentencing, the mountain community found a new rhythm. No scam attempts. Monthly barbecues. Mrs. Patterson teaching fellow seniors how to verify credentials. Karen speaking at the local library about fraud prevention. We had gone from victims to protectors to mentors. At one summer barbecue, I addressed our gathered neighbors with a confidence I hadn't known I had. A year ago, I might have paid Diane just to avoid conflict. Today, I know that standing up to bullies protects us all. Karen chimed in with her own reflection. "We learned something powerful. A preparation beats fear. Every time. We're more than neighbors now. We're a shield." And the most incredible change of all, Mrs. Patterson. "I went from being scammed to being the guardian," she said with pride. "Best job I've ever had." The 12 families Diane once targeted were now a tight-knit unit. Weekly coffee chats, shared contact lists, annual safety awareness events. At the close of one evening barbecue, I noticed Karen watching someone across the street. A woman with a high-end camera was snapping close-up shots of homes. "Honey," Karen said quietly, "see her? Could be a new neighbor, or something else." Her smile told me we were ready to find out. We crossed the street casually. "Hi, I'm Karen," she said, her tone friendly but alert. "Can we help you with something?" The woman flinched slightly. "Oh, I'm just taking pictures for my real estate blog," she said, gripping her camera tightly. But the details didn't add up. A pro-grade camera with a telephoto lens focused on houses, not nature. A clipboard with property info, no business cards. And when Karen asked which site she blogged for, the woman fumbled for words. "Just general mountain homes, for my audience," she repeated. Karen kept her voice bright. "Which homes are you featuring?" "You at Broken Bar." "Just general ones," came the vague answer again. I pointed to the specialized lens. "That's a pretty specific tool for general shots." Behind her smile, Karen's mind was whirring. She subtly pulled out her phone and texted Mrs. Patterson. "New woman taking house photos? Can you check with sheriff if real estate surveys are scheduled?" In minutes, Mrs. Patterson confirmed with Martinez. "No surveys on record." Karen sprung the trap like a seasoned chess master. "Are you working with a property management company?" The woman lit up. "Yes, Mountain Property Services. We help homeowners with compliance." Karen and I exchanged a knowing glance. The same script Diane used. My phone buzzed. "No such company in state registry." Mrs. Patterson. Karen didn't hesitate. "There's no Mountain Property Services listed in Colorado," she said calmly. The woman turned pale. "Maybe we're registered in another state." "But you said you help local homeowners," I added. "Why would an out-of-state firm do that?" She tried to retreat, stammering. "There's been a misunderstanding at Broken Bar." Karen smiled, unwavering. "Only misunderstanding is thinking we'd fall for it." Sheriff Martinez arrived in 10 minutes. "Ma'am, I need to see ID. We've had reports of suspicious activity." The woman handed over a laminated fake business license. "A poor forgery." "This is a template copy," Martinez said. "And the name doesn't match your driver's license." Her real name was Margaret Stevens. She was arrested for attempted fraud, false representation, and trespassing. Unlike Diane's breakdown, this takedown was clean and swift. That night, our neighbors came together again at this time to celebrate. We'd stopped another scam before it even started. Mrs. Patterson beamed. Our system works. The difference from last year was dramatic. Now we were alert, prepared, and united. Sheriff Martinez addressed us with simple clarity. This is how crime prevention should work before anyone gets hurt. Karen nodded. Diane taught us what to watch for. This woman walked into a prepared community. And that was the truth. The cost of our education had been high, but the lessons had taken root. A background check on Margaret Stevens revealed an all too familiar pattern. She was wanted in both Wyoming and Utah for pulling off nearly identical scams, right down to the forged business cards and her angle on property compliance. How did she even learn Diane's methods? I asked Sheriff Martinez. Inmates share stories, he explained. Diane probably boasted about her scheme before her downfall. The ripple effects from Margaret's capture spread quickly. Martinez received inquiries from 3 neighboring counties asking about our verification system. A dozen communities reached out to request Karen's fraud prevention workshops. Regional media highlighted our efforts, showcasing how even rural areas could defend themselves against modern cons. Martinez shared something that caught me off guard. I told Diane about Margaret's arrest. She actually seemed pleased. Karen raised an eyebrow. Really? She said, and I quote, at least something good came out of my mistakes. It was surprising, but maybe even people in prison could change. As our community's growth continued, I found myself leading a neighborhood safety group. We held regular meetings, conducted training for new residents, and established an alert system for any suspicious behavior. Karen, always meticulous, created a scam spotting checklist. Anyone claiming authority without official ID. High-pressure tactics or urgency. Requests for cash only. Refusing to wait for verification. Mrs. Patterson became our trusted fraud prevention coach, guiding older residents with steady confidence. Never feel bad for asking questions, she'd say. Your doubts might be what protects everyone. Watching her go from a shaken victim to a respected leader was nothing short of inspiring. Within 6 months, our verification program had shut down 4 more scams, 2 fake home inspectors, a phony census agent, and a fraudulent solar panel salesman. Sheriff Martinez proudly reported a 78% drop in scam attempts throughout the region. Word was out our rural community was no longer easy prey. Recognition came from the highest levels. The Colorado Attorney General visited our neighborhood to study our security model. Your community sets the standard for rural fraud prevention, he said. Would you consider training others? Karen didn't hesitate. We'd be honored. That moment birthed the Mountain Community Protection Network of free workshops, detailed verification templates, sheriff coordination procedures, and support resources for victims. Within a year, 43 towns across Colorado had adopted our system. None reported a single successful scam. One evening, sitting together on our porch as the sun set, I turned to Karen. Remember when our biggest concern was Diane's phony citations? Karen smiled. Now the hardest decision is which community to help next. You know, your dad lost because he had to face predators on his own, she added. Now dozens of communities are standing strong together. Just then, her phone rang. Unknown number. Karen answered with the caution of someone who'd learned to expect trouble. This is Sheriff Williams from Montana, the voice said. We've got a situation that sounds familiar. Someone claiming to represent the Federal Property Compliance Division is demanding $1,500 from ranch families. Karen glanced at me, then back at the phone. Sheriff, we'd love to help. It was copyright Yahoo, but on a bigger scale. A predator had found new territory, and this time, our experience would make all the difference. In a video call that followed, Karen walked Sheriff Williams through everything we'd built. Step 1, verify credentials. Step 2, document everything before confrontation. Step 3, coordinate with victims. And lastly, prepare the legal steps in advance. The key, she explained, is to make them expose themselves before they realize they're being watched. 2 weeks later, Williams called again. The scammer was arrested before collecting a single dollar. Not one rancher had been duped. Your system worked flawlessly, he said. How can we ever thank you? Karen's answer captured the essence of our journey. Teach it to your neighboring counties. 2 years on, the impact was astonishing. 67 communities across 5 states had adopted our verification system. There had been an 89% drop in successful fraud attempts in participating areas, preventing over $2.1 million in losses. Jefferson County hadn't seen a single successful scam in 2 full years. We had gone from victims of broken bar to defenders of broken bar to guardians of an entire region. But the most unexpected moment came one afternoon when there was a knock at our door. Karen answered Ita, and standing on our porch was Diane Walsh. She looked nothing like the domineering woman we remembered. Her voice was quiet, her posture was uncertain. I know I'm probably the last person you want to see, she said, but I just needed to say something face to face. The woman who once brought fear to our community stood before us, noticeably changed. Whatever had happened during her time in prison seemed to have left a genuine mark. You were right about everything, Diane admitted softly. I became the very thing I once despised. Prison gave me the time to understand the harm I caused. With trembling hands, she passed an envelope to Karen. It's a list of every family I conned, along with notes on what I took from them, she said. Some of them you'll never track down, but they deserve to know it wasn't their fault. Inside were records of 19 victimized families, and contact details for 3 other women Diane had once mentored in fraud. Karen looked through the papers, her expression unreadable. Why give us this now? I can't undo what I did, Diane replied, but maybe I can help stop more people from getting hurt. She explained her plans to move to Arizona and take a low-profile job as a bookkeeper for her sister's small business. And no control, no titles, just spreadsheets and numbers. I'm not expecting forgiveness, she said quietly. I just hope the people I wronged can find peace. Thanks to Diane's information, Karen was able to locate 3 more victims who received restitution. 2 active scammers were arrested in other states, and one woman once poised to begin her own scam chose a different path after hearing what had happened to Diane. Justice kept tripling outward. The changes in our community were just as powerful as the law enforcement successes. I stood in front of town meetings now, speaking with a confidence I never knew I had. 3 years ago, I told one crowd, I would have paid Diane just to avoid conflict. Today, I understand that real protection means standing firm together. Karen had grown from a protective spouse into a regional leader. I started this to protect our home, she told a reporter once. But now it's about protecting everyone's home. Mrs. Patterson, now 77, had become the beating heart of our senior fraud prevention group. Her transformation from prey to protector inspired us daily. I went from victim to mentor, she often joked. Best retirement plan I ever had. Our community had come alive with purpose. Monthly Safety Saturdays taught residents how to verify identities. We'd set up a rapid response contact network that reached 47 homes, created a team of 8 volunteer verifiers, and even hosted an annual Community Protection Day. Our new normal exceeded anything we'd imagined. Average response time to suspicious incidents, 12 minutes. Successful scams in the past 3 years, 0. Suspects scared off, 23. Other communities trained, 67. We had built something lasting. 5 years after Diane first knocked on our gate, Karen and I were once again sitting on our porch, watching the sun dip behind the mountains. Do you ever miss the quiet life? I asked, half teasing. Back when our biggest decision was what to stream on Netflix, Karen paused thoughtfully. Sometimes. But then I get an email from a family that didn't lose their home because of what we started. That's worth more than peace and quiet. Her phone buzzed of 14 unread messages, requests from communities across the region. Montana wanted us to train 6 more counties. Wyoming had 3 cases in progress. New Mexico was asking for a full consultation. It never ends, I said, not complaining. Karen's smile was tired but resolute. Good, because predators don't take breaks, so we don't stop teaching people how to fight back. When the local high schoolers interviewed Karen for their civic project, she gave advice that summed up everything we'd learned. Always question authority, always verify, and never, ever let someone make you feel powerless in your own home. You're stronger than you think, especially when you stand with others. The closing scene of our journey mirrored the beginning. A new family had moved into the neighborhood. Karen walked over to greet them with a welcome basket, but this time, it included something extra: our community's verification checklist and emergency contact info. If anyone shows up claiming official business, she said, give us a call first. The family looked surprised. Is that really necessary? I stepped beside Karen and smiled at the familiar question. Let us tell you a story about why being prepared is better than being paranoid. Because some stories are meant to be shared, and some communities are worth fighting for. The best way to beat a scam isn't luck, it's awareness, unity, and the courage to speak up when others would stay quiet. Diane thought our little mountain town would be easy prey. What she found instead was a community that had each other's backs, a scammer's worst nightmare. At HOA Stories, we believe preparation defeats intimidation, every time. So remember, never let anyone make you feel powerless in your own home. Ask questions, verify everything, and know you're stronger when you don't stand alone. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button, and we'll see you in the next one.